Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today, we have an industry expert on the show. Not necessarily in the field, but in the recruiting aspect. But he's not actually a recruiter. You still with me? Good. His name is Ryan Englin, CEO and founder of Core Matters. And he is nothing short of a pioneer in the blue-collar world and laser-focused on solving the age-old problem of how to attract people, not only to the industry, but to your company specifically. He's developed a proven program for acquiring the talent that we in the trades dream about every single night. He doesn't actively hire or recruit, but rather coaches skilled trade companies on how to shift their mindset and practices to build and keep a rockstar team, which is exactly what we all need. So grab a pen and a piece of paper for this one, guys and girls. You're going to need it. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and on our website at blueisthenewwhite.com to receive all the latest updates. As always, this show's not monetized and we don't run ads. We rely strictly on word of mouth from our listeners to further the mission. So if you enjoy this episode, please take a second to rate it, review it, and share it. The future generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again, and enjoy this episode of Blue is the New White with Ryan Englin. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. I have got a special guest with us today, somebody I've had the privilege of hearing speak now 2 times. Equally impressed both of the times I heard him. So I wanted to invite him on the show to give all of you listeners the same insight that he gave me and my teams. So without further ado, I've got Ryan Englin with Core Matters with me. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Josh. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you, and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about you and introduce you to my audience. So with that being said, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? Let us know kind of who you are, where you come from, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So as you said, I'm the CEO and founder of Core Matters, and we work specifically with companies in the blue collar industry to help them hire better people faster. Not a recruiter, I'm not a staffing agency. We've actually developed a model that we help them implement. So as I like to say, we teach them to fish. This is all about helping guys in the trades learn how to recruit, because there's really not a school out there teaching it. It's not like there's a lot of books out there teaching it. If you're in Silicon Valley, there's a book, there's a masterclass, there's something on how to get software engineers and giving them unlimited PTO and work from home. But for guys in the trade, it's not there.
Yeah, well, beanbag chairs and slushy machines and,
Xboxes.
Xboxes, definitely.
Nap pods, I think is the new one.
Full bars.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But, I got started in this because I started a digital marketing agency just over a decade ago. And I really liked working with guys in the home services space. And it was about 5 years ago now that I had a whole bunch of clients. I don't know if they were talking to each other or what, but they're like, we got to turn the leads off. We can't do any more lead gen. And I said, what's going on? They're like, you're doing so good, but we can't service the leads. And I remember specifically an HVAC contractor in July in Phoenix, it's like 120 degrees. And they said, yeah, the first opening on our calendar is 3 weeks out. I'm like, nobody's going to wait 3 weeks. What do you think the problem is? Like, we've got 4 empty trucks. We don't have techs. It's like, let's fix that problem. I mean, I look back at it now and it was a moment of brilliance, but I was like, maybe I'm insane in the moment. 3 weeks later, they call me and they're like, I don't know what you did, but the trucks are full. We got more trucks on order because we got enough techs now. Turn the leads back on. I was like, this is kind of fun. And it's different. And I like different.
And it's so necessary.
Fast forward 5 years and here we are. We've got the Core Fit hiring system and this is all we do. And, I get asked a lot, why the trades? Why blue collar? And that I go back to my childhood. I remember my dad was in manufacturing and I remember him coming home with these brick phones in the 80s because he was on call. And at the time, like, what's a mobile phone? But he was on call in the evenings. He was on call on the weekends. I remember weekends we would spend time at the plant because he didn't have enough people, or he didn't have the right people to do it. And at the time, I didn't know. I just thought I was hanging out with my dad, going down to the plant. And here we are now. My dad's in retirement age, and now there's talk like, what do they do? He's the business, and that I see happen for so many guys in the blue collar space. They become the business, and it's not because they didn't want to do something more. They didn't want to create an asset to sell. They didn't know how, because they didn't know how to find and hire and keep people they can trust. And so I think back to what my dad was doing, what he wanted to accomplish, which was give more to his kids, spend more time with his kids, have some of the things that he didn't have growing up. And while we had those things, we didn't have time together because he was always working. And he's still, even now, he's still always working. And he's at the point now where he's like, it's not even worth it to find people. We're just going to see if we can sell the company. And I know so many guys that have started a company. Either they were turning the wrench themselves and they're like, I'm going to go start something, or, maybe they took it over from mom and dad and they just wanted to do more with their family. They wanted time freedom. They wanted the financial security. They wanted those things, but then they became a slave to the business because they weren't able to hire people. And so that's a big reason why I do what I do. I want to see that cycle break for so many families.
Yeah. And this is such an important conversation. I can guarantee you that ears are perking up everywhere because, this is something that I think every business in the trades right now is struggling with, especially right now. We're seeing new trends and new things surface after the wave of COVID and everything else. And it's changing so rapidly, and it's becoming a problem not only to get people now, but to keep people. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that this conversation is very important to have right now in the climate that we're seeing. So, as far as from what you do today, what's the biggest problem that you see, with regard to hiring? We know that it's hard to get people, but why?
So I think there's a couple of things on this, and I'm actually studying this right now to see if there was any kind of pivot point where this happened. But there's a lot of talk about people not knowing that these opportunities in the trades exist, not knowing what kind of income you can make being in the trades. And when you really do the research and you take a step back and you look at it, I don't know that that's really the problem we need to solve. I don't think that visibility of these careers is the problem. I think the modern workforce doesn't want them anymore, that they're not attracted to them like they used to be. It used to be cool to be in construction and build skyscrapers, whether you were an electrician or a plumber or steel erector, it didn't matter. It was cool to be in the trades. And now it's just not cool anymore. And I think that the industry as a whole needs to really grapple with that concept of we're not as cool as we used to be. It's way cooler to work for Facebook now. Right? And literally speaking, it's way cooler to work for Amazon, because in Phoenix here, Amazon's paying like $20 an hour to sit in your living room and answer calls. That's what you're up against. So I don't think that it's a visibility issue. I think it's an attractiveness issue.
And with that said, how do we fix an attractiveness issue? Is it a marketing problem? Is it a cultural problem? What about it isn't attractive?
Well, to answer your question, yes. It's a marketing problem. It's a culture problem. I use a lot of analogies in the work that I do. And one of them I use is dating analogy. So think about this for a second. You're getting ready to go on a first date. Do you A, roll out of bed on a Saturday morning, put on some baggy old sweatpants, slap some spit through your hair, skip brushing your teeth and deodorant and go out on your first date? Or do you actually maybe get a haircut, maybe buy some new clothes, maybe smell nice, right? Which one do you think is going to get people to be attracted to you? It's the same thing with online profiles. Like, we talk about this in the trade so much around the consumer. Like, does the consumer like your website? Does the consumer like your online reputation? Do they like your social media profiles? But for some reason, we disregard it for the job seekers and for the people that are going to help us grow our team so that we can then take care of the consumer. And so I think that there's this this inward look that we have to do to start solving the problem.
Yeah. And I think that's a heck of an inward look too, because, you look around at these industries and a lot of them, for lack of a better term, are of the previous generation, right? And kind of what used to work doesn't necessarily work now because of, the next generation coming up. And I'm not talking specifically about, like the baby boomer generation or anything. This happens every single generation, right? Every single one has, different views and outlooks, than the previous one. So how do we get people to understand that, this is an issue that we need to fix internally? What can we do? What can we show them?
So I think there's a couple of things in that question you asked, but the first thing is, what can we do to get us to actually improve? Right? There's so many things. And I think that we need to move away from this mindset of employees are a cog in a machine. They are here to produce. And if they don't produce, just like a broken down machine, you can do your best to repair it, but eventually you got to replace it. So we need to move away from this mindset of, if the person breaks down, we just go get another person. That's what we used to do. And we really need to move more into that mindset of, hey, this is a relationship. They're investing in me and I'm investing in them. And it's no longer about trading time for money. Because that's really what it was for the boomers. They put in their time to get a nice pension. They retire, they're done. The modern workforce doesn't work that way. I mean, people are raising salaries all over the place. They still can't find people. If it was all about money, they'd have all the people they needed, but it's not working. So it's one of those things to just change the way you think about growing a team. And then from there, you have to figure out, well, who are the right people to join my team? Not everybody's right for you. And so that's it's a deeper conversation around culture and behavioral fit and those kinds of things. But if we really take a step back and say, am I dating the kind of person that I want to marry or not? Right? Go back to those relationship analogies.
Right.
And we got away from that somewhere. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know a lot of service companies around the country, and you're absolutely right. It's no longer about, how do we find the right person? It's how do we find any person, to fill these roles. And that's true. And to speak on what you just said about, monetary incentives and salary and stuff like that, that's where a lot of focus is being put, because I'm seeing it too in the high wages, in the sign-on bonuses, in even quarterly bonuses and incentives and things like that. Or how about recruitment? This is something, a conversation that I just had with my team not long ago, offering an incentive to help recruit people to the company doesn't even seem to work now as well as it used to, or even if it ever did. So it's tough for me too, as a business owner, to hear some of this stuff and to wrap my mind around it, because I'm guilty of it as well. And for the simple fact that I don't know a better way, right? Which is why we're talking right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious then, you talk about finding the right people. How important is that in relation to finding any people in the skilled trades right now?
So I want to back up to something you said about how you're seeing all of these monetary rewards and these increases in pay to really attract people to your business. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the first part where it breaks down. If someone comes to work for you, Josh, and you're paying them 50 cents more an hour, that was all they needed, was 50 cents more an hour. What do you think the likelihood is that when your competition offers them 50 cents more an hour, that they're going to leave you? So as employers, part of the problem is we're creating it. We're creating some of this problem. We're creating some of these behaviors. And I think that this is a cycle we have to break. And so when we start thinking about our recruiting process as more like dating, like getting to know somebody, getting to understand why they come to work. And that's one of the things I ask my clients. One of the first things I ask, do you know why your employees work for you? And the answer is not because they need money. because the money is a means to an end. They use the money for something. What are they using the money for? And until you care about what's important to them, they're not going to care about what's important to you. And as a business owner, we all know what's important, right? Growing the company, having a healthy company, healthy bottom line. Like, these are the things that are important. Most employees don't care. And they especially won't care until you care about what's important to them.
That's some powerful stuff right there. And I mean, it makes sense, while you say it. And it's just, it's one of those things, I think, that you hear and you're like, wow, that really makes a lot of sense. But in the moment, you can't figure it out for the life of you, but you're absolutely right. I mean, and is that what you're seeing in the industry? Is that is it more of a lack of caring or a lack of understanding? Let me ask it that way.
I think it's both, but I think the reason that people don't want the jobs in the trades anymore is because they don't think people care about them. 86% of millennials will take a pay cut to work for an organization whose values align with their own, who cares about what they care about. That's why you see a lot of these organizations putting some social cause behind what they do now. It's a way to attract people to join your company and help you achieve your mission. Now, all these companies with these social causes, they're still in it to make money. They're still in it to have a healthy bottom line. But if you want to attract good people that care about what you care about, you get behind some kind of social cause.
Yeah. And you mentioned millennials, and, that leads me to a question, right? That I think everybody is wondering, because we're in a labor gap right now, a skilled labor gap, excuse me. And we know why, right? It's because, the last generation is beginning to retire. And so we're relying on this next generation to come in, and it's happening at a rate of 5-1 in favor of those retiring. And that's devastating for anybody in the skilled trades, because that means that the industry is growing faster than the profession. So how many millennials actually make up the workforce now? What are we realistically seeing out there? What are we looking at?
Well, millennials just took over. They now account for more than 50% of the workforce. So if you're not doing anything to get in front of them, or you still are hanging on to some of your millennial jokes, you're going to struggle. Okay. I promise you that when the boomers were growing up and they were in their 20s and 30s, there were a lot of jokes about boomers. It's one of those things, like as the generations mature, those jokes and those things go away. But if you're not doing anything to attract them, and it's all about money, and it's all about pensions, and it's all about benefits, then you're going to struggle, because the boomers are aging out. You already said that. I think 40% of people in the trades are going to age out in the next 6 years or something crazy like that. Mm-hmm. So not only do we already have a shortage, but we're going to then take the people that are in the workplace now and cut them in half, basically, in the next 6 years. It's just going to get worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking about it too. And millennials, right? They're already, into their working career, right? They've already basically chosen what they want to do for a living. And yeah, I know that, a handful of them will probably choose to switch careers at some point in their life. But really, we have to start looking ahead, right? I mean, we have to start looking at the Generation Z and below, because those are the ones that are deciding what they want to do for their future. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the group that's graduating now, I mean, they're digital natives. So think about this. They grew up in a house that never had a corded phone, right? They grew up in a world that had the internet and Facebook and all of these things. They were socially and digitally connected.
They don't know why it's called Rewind.
They have no idea why it's called Rewind. And so for them, you think about the way that they grew up and what they were exposed to. It's all about the exchange of information in their world. Their worldview is the exchange of information. That's what they grew up in. It's not like the old days where you could go out. I mean, we joke all the time. I'm like, I wish my kids would just go out and get dirty. That's what I did when I was a kid. Like, we didn't have all of these things. And a good time for us was digging some ditches, throwing water in it, and having mud fights. but it was more of a physical generation. And now we've moved to this intellectual generation that's all about information exchange. And if we're not appealing to that, I mean, that's what their brains were wired for as they grew up. If we're not appealing to that, we're going to miss out on them. They're going to completely ignore us.
Yeah. Wow. That's really powerful. When you said they're growing up with exchange of information, right? This is a way of life for them. They understand it. That's why, even when I scroll through something on Facebook, I have to stop every once in a while, right, to see if an ad is real, where they have this almost sixth sense where they can just scroll and scroll and scroll. You can't even, it's just a blur of colors, right? And they somehow know when to stop on a post, and it's never an ad, right? It always has some sort of value to them, right? Because it's an exchange of information. So I find that fascinating, and I think it's something really important that our industry especially has to keep in mind, because you're right. I mean, inherently, the trades are very hands-on, right? So it makes sense that they gravitate towards this hands-on mentality and almost ignore, the other side of it, which I would consider, intellectual, digital, exchanging information, social media, that kind of stuff. It's not something that their brains are wired for. Mm-hmm. So looking toward the future then, I mean, what does it look like? As it stands right now, what does it look like? It's a super broad, vague question.
Yeah,
I don't care.
All of this is speculation. Anybody that says they have this figured out, they're selling you snake oil. I will tell you that. Yeah. So here's what I think is going to happen. And we're already starting to see this in the digital natives, the Gen Zs. We're already starting to see them disconnect a little bit more from technology. I remember I have a nephew who's a millennial, and I remember him sitting on the couch texting the buddy that was sitting right next to him while they were watching TV. It was the weirdest thing. Like, I didn't understand that. But what we're seeing is their younger siblings, or maybe even some of their earliest kids, that they are now getting out of high school and they're disconnecting from technology, and they're more about experience now. It's kind of the cool hip thing now to be an influencer on social media. But these influencers aren't like they were when I was growing up. These influencers are traveling the world, and they're doing things, and they're part of these social causes, and they're making an impact, and they're sharing it online. And that's kind of the cool thing now. And I think so what's going to happen is these younger generation, the kids that are just getting out of high school, are going to say, you know what? I don't want to sit there and stare at a computer my whole life. I want to get out and explore the world. I want to create experiences. I want to do these things. One of the things that I see happen in the trade so much, especially years later, I'll be talking to these guys and they're like, see that building? Yeah, I plumbed 3 of those floors. And you're like, dude, that's cool. And he's like proud of it.
Yeah.
Why don't we appeal to that more? These experiences and this long-term pride that comes with being in the trades. Like, why do we think it's all about go make a lot of money, don't have student debt, get an apprenticeship, make a lot of money, don't have student debt? Like, nobody cares. Let's talk about some of the cool stuff we get to build.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of truth to that, right? Because if you ride in the car with any tradesperson that does work locally, you'll know exactly, what you're talking about, right? And I'm guilty of it too. My wife has to tell me to shut up sometimes. Like, I service that restaurant. Oh, you don't want to eat there. You do want to eat there, But it's a pride factor, right? You feel like you're contributing to something that can contribute to somebody else. I mean, restaurants are my example, but could be buildings, could be stadiums, could be streets, or street lights or whatever. But you're absolutely right, and I think that that's very important to be able to highlight that type of gratification. In the trades. I think that will appeal a lot more to that younger generation. So moving forward, I know we're running close on time here, so we're going to try to wrap it up pretty soon. But I want to know how you are helping the industry and what it is exactly that you do to help these companies actually attract this type of talent. whether it be the future generations, whether it be, what we're looking for today with experienced people, so the platform is yours, Ryan. Take it away.
Yeah. So like I said in the intro, we created the Core Fit hiring system, and it's a collection of processes and tools that we help our clients implement. So think about like a toolbox, right? If you're a refrigeration tech, you have a set of tools that apply to what you do and the work you do. And there's a skill and a mastery in using them. And we do the same exact thing. We teach that skill and that mastery to our clients. But I think one of the big fundamental shifts in what we do compared to what most other people in the trades and recruiting are doing is we have this belief that recruiting is not an HR activity. Recruiting is a marketing activity. You are attracting people to your business just like you would a customer, except now it's a job seeker. And you are interviewing them. You are pre-qualifying them. You can make sure that you're fulfilling for them and that you can afford them and they can afford you. It's a marketing and sales process. And when you can make this fundamental shift away from recruiting being an HR activity into it being a marketing and sales activity, you really just can open up the floodgates to what's possible. So a lot of what we do is helping people understand how to be different in the marketplace. It's not okay to be on the same job boards as everybody else. It's not okay to be paying the same as everybody else because you're not different. In customer marketing, we talk all the time about being different. What can you do to stand out? Seth Godin wrote a book called Purple Cow. The idea that if you're driving through the Midwest and you see a bunch of cows, who cares? But when there's a purple one there, you're going to stop and take a selfie with it. And you're going to share it with everybody. And we focus a lot on that on customer acquisition, but we never think about that when it comes to recruiting. And so really putting a marketing perspective on your recruiting efforts. How do you have a brand that stands out? How do you make sure that the right people are attracted to that brand? And then from there, how do you build the process so that you actually can fulfill for them? How do you do good interviews to make sure you're hiring the right ones? How do you make sure that I don't know if this ever happened to you, Josh. It's happened to me. I interview someone. I'm like, oh my gosh, where they've been my whole life. And like 3 weeks later, I'm like, who is this Yahoo? That is not the person I interviewed. Right? Like, how do you get around this stuff? How do you make sure that your processes support a really solid recruiting effort? And make sure you're getting the right people. Because that's another thing. Everybody tells me they want good people, but no one ever defines good for me as someone that can turn a wrench or someone that can operate equipment. Good means they show up on time. Right? Good means they clean up the job site. Good means they can look the customer in the eye and say, thank you. Like, that's good. None of that has to do with whether or not they can do the craft. Yeah. And so I think it's making those shifts away from, I need a new cog in the machine, to how do I invest in a relationship with someone that's going to care about the company as much as I do. And that's what we do with our clients. We help them make those shifts.
Yeah. And that's much, much needed, as you know, in this industry. So thank you first and foremost for what you do. But before we hop off, a couple more things. Is there anything else that we left out that you wanted to touch on or elaborate on?
I could keep going for a long time on this, Josh. I'm pretty passionate about this. I would just say for those listening that really want to do something different, take a step back. Look at your business from the outside and say, am I attractive to the people I want to attract?
Yeah.
Because if all you're attracting is the bottom feeders, it could be because you're not attractive to really good people. You're not attractive to those rock stars, to those A players. So just take a step back and take a look at your organization from a digital perspective, from a culture perspective. Look at your online reputation. What do people find out about you when they Google you? And if you're not happy with what you're seeing, I can promise you someone that doesn't know about your brand isn't going to be excited to come work there.
Yeah. Sometimes the truth hurts, Ryan, but it's always necessary for growth.
Absolutely.
All right. So one more question before we hop off. I like to end these on a personal note. On these podcasts and in the book and stuff like that, I talk about, being able to live your definition of success, right? And And because I use the skilled trades as a big proponent to be able to lead you toward living whatever you define as success. So I'm curious for you personally, how do you define success?
Oh, wow. It's really open-ended question there. In my business, for me, the way I define success is that I am seeing our clients be able to make that fundamental shift to being in a business that owns them, to actually owning a business. They're no longer a slave to the business. They've got some time freedom. They've got the right people in place that they can trust, and they actually get to grow a business they're proud of. So for me, that's success on the business side. On the personal side, I got 2 little ones at home. And there is so many ways to define success. But for me here, the big thing for me is I just want to raise kids that grow up to love Jesus and want to make an impact in the world.
Awesome. Very, very well said, Ryan. And I appreciate it very, very much. Why don't you go ahead and let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, so you can Google me, really easy. I'm everywhere. But if you want to learn more, go to our website at thecorematters.com. That's TheCoreMatters.com.
Awesome. Ryan, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. And I know my listeners will too.
Thank you, Josh.